Hello, World History 1 students. This is Mr. Hotelling, and today we're going to be talking about Unit 2. Right now, we're just going to do a quick overview of some of the things that we're going to be learning, set out our learning targets, and kind of define some of the basic things we're going to need to know moving forward. So to start, let's address the learning target. The student will apply social science skills to understand the period from the Paleolithic era to the agricultural revolution. So there are those social science skills that we talked about back in Unit 1 when we laid out some of the things we'll need to know. And then there are some new terms there, Paleolithic era and the agricultural revolution. We're going to unpack those a little bit deeper as we go through the unit. But just remember at the end, those are the key things that we need to understand. The time period from the Paleolithic era to the agricultural revolution. Seems pretty straightforward. Probably a good time to mention, though, that this is hundreds of thousands of years. The Paleolithic era to the agricultural revolution is not a short time period. So although we're going to be talking about this large chunk of time, we're really going to be focusing in on some of these key things in how we get from point A to point B. So just a quick rundown of what this unit is going to entail. Our goal this unit is to understand the prehistoric world of our earliest relatives. Like I said, from the Paleolithic era to the agricultural revolution. What was that time period like? And you see the word prehistory there, prehistoric. We're going to talk about how this is a time period before we have written records. So this is a really interesting time period to study. Could spend a long time on this, but we're going to spend another week or so trying to get as much information as we can to understand this time period. So we're going to start by traveling back to the origins of our species in Africa and retrace our journey through the globe. So we're talking about species here. So if you're in like a biology class or something like that, you're going to hear a lot of similar words here. We're going to kind of have a very scientific look at this time period. And we also need to know things like our continents. You see Africa right there, and then we're going to retrace our journey across the globe. So we need to know what our planet looks like and how humans are going to move throughout it. Then we'll investigate the social and technological developments of our prehistoric relatives that laid the groundwork for our modern societies. That is a mouthful, but basically we're going to look at that relationship between our social lives and the technology that we develop. And that is not talking about social media and your phones and the Chromebooks. We're actually going to be talking about early technological developments like stone tools and things like that, and our early societies in terms of things like living together in small nomadic clans and groups and growing eventually into permanent settlements. And lastly, we will establish the methods used to determine how our ancient ancestors lived. Essentially, we're going to ask the question, how do we know all this? If we're talking about a time before writing, how are we getting our information? And again, this is going to come back around to that scientific thought process using some of those historical thinking skills. So just to kind of give you a glimpse of what each topic is going to be on, topic 2.1, human origins, we're going to ask the question, what was the impact of the geographic environment on hunter-gatherer societies? Okay, so hunter-gatherer societies were shaped by their physical environment. Again, this is something different than the modern world, where we typically find ourselves changing our physical environment to fit our needs. Our earliest human origins, our earliest ancestors were actually going to be reliant and dependent on the physical environment, and therefore it would affect them more than they affected it. Then we're going to talk about that Paleolithic era to the agricultural revolution more detailed. We're going to explore how early humans overcame these limits, okay, these physical environmental limits, to eventually settle into permanent settlements and start impacting the environment. So this is the earliest we see humans impacting the environment rather than the other way around. So again, we're going to look at how technology advances so that they can do that, and then how their society changes in response to those changes. And then again, lastly, we're going to look at people like archaeologists, talk about who they are, what they do, and we're going to look at examples of how they're continually finding new things and how that's shaping our understanding of the past. And we're going to ask the question, how do archaeological discoveries change our understanding of human societies? Essentially, how do these new discoveries change our understanding of the past, and then also how that affects our understanding of right now, how we got to where we are now, how it kind of tells a bigger story. And if to go back to that puzzle analogy, how do these new pieces change our picture? How do we understand it better now that we have more pieces? So I'm really excited to get into this unit with you guys, and so we'll talk more in class.